with Jesse Simonton and Austin Price, Brent Hubbs, VolQuest.com. Wrapping up the Georgia game, a little post-game podcast here.
Instant React.
Instant React, we'll call it. I like that. Jesse Simonton with the title there. All right, give me a quick, good, bad, ugly type thought. I know you're going to write this, but give me a quick thought.
Encouraging question mark. I like that. I almost think that this is like teasing upon further review. Now, there's a lot of stuff I'm going to be interested in watching and rewatch, but I think there are some encouraging things you can take away from this game. At the same time, you still lost by close to 4 touchdowns in an SEC game, albeit to the number 3 team in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a team that when you look at it, Georgia's probably not going to ask for any of your players in their starting lineup. They're probably comfortable with their 22 over your 22 individually all the way through. But let's look at some of the encouraging things, starting with the quarterback play of Brian Maurer. People are going to anoint him the next this, that, or the other. You can't go down that road. But the takeaway from Brian Maurer has to be good. I mean, it has to be such a positive for Tennessee.
Again, yeah, at times it was just chuck it deep and see if they can make some plays. But I thought he ran several crossing routes in the first half that he hit on. As Jesse called it in the 2-minute drill, he dropped a pill on that seam route to Juwan for the touchdown, and really what was a perfect throw. I'm surprised he didn't run around a little more tonight. He really kind of stayed in the pocket, and I'm surprised they didn't really have more design run calls to maybe to either roll him or a little bit more than they did, or things for him just to try to to pick up yards on the ground. I'm impressed. Credit the coaches. I know they scored only 14 points tonight, and
everything. 23 yards at one point in the second half.
After halftime, Georgia really shut them down pretty good. But still, I thought that the game plan for what they did with him was really, really solid. And how can you not feel like they'll have a shot with him at quarterback against Mississippi State, against South Carolina, against Kentucky, Vanderbilt? Tennessee's going to have some chances to win some games as long as he's out there, just because he gets it out of his hands. And I think that honestly, the receivers, man, they're competing hard for him out there.
Yeah, that's certainly. They certainly seem to have his back. I would say. I mean, he was decisive and accurate, and those were two things that JG has not been through 4 games. He did get the ball out of his hands quickly, but he also threw it to the right guy and made a quick read. Georgia kind of dared him to do that in the first half. They kind of, they played softer coverage, especially in that belly zone, kind of in the middle. I wrote my 10 things. I thought it was going to be because Kmet had some success with the Irish and Notre Dame going against the middle, that was going to be maybe the DWA, but it wasn't DWA. It's been arguably just Tennessee's best overall player this season, Juwan Jennings, finding success there. The double move to Callaway was a perfect throw. But then you saw why Brian Maurer was a freshman quarterback and why, he wasn't starting 3 weeks ago. Now, you can make the argument perhaps he should have played more beforehand or what have you, but, he wasn't as decisive once Georgia started really pinching down. They made the adjustment. Stokes started playing, some more press coverage. He obviously threw the interception. The sack fumble was just he didn't see that hit coming. And Georgia got after him. I mean, the pressure was there. I mean, he's going to be in the ice bath tonight, no doubt.
He didn't see it, but he sure as hell felt it.
Oh,
I felt it. You felt it. We all felt it.
You could hear that pop, and that's kind of the concern. I think that. Can Tennessee against some of these better teams? Can they protect? And tonight it was kind of a mixed bag. I thought the offensive line overall as a pass blocking unit did pretty well. They clearly, Hubs, have no faith or real intention to run the football. 16 yards on the first play of the game. I think we calculated it right before the pod. It was basically, including the garbage time, 56 yards. 56 plus the or 16 plus the 40 that gets you to 56. That's just not going to cut it out of 70 total rushing yards in the night. You're not. They couldn't shorten the game, and they got gassed.
Well, but that's the Georgia team that's only given up 57 yards rushing. Okay, now again, garbage time yards, a little misleading. I get all that, but I think the one thing that they're going to have to do moving forward, and we're going to talk about this in future podcasts and everything else, to help them, they have to try to run it more. They have to try to shorten the game more than they did, or they're going to wear a defense out because they dominated time of possession. Last time Tennessee had 2 receivers with 100 yards receiving, Missouri 2012, Justin Hunter and Michael Rivera. Jim Chaney offense. Tonight, it was clearly he felt like his quarterback was going to throw it where he wanted him to and on time, and he did get the ball to playmakers, and he got the ball to the two guys he likes the best, and Juwan Jennings and Marquez Callaway, vertically down the field. Now the question is, can that continue, moving forward? But those two guys played at a high level. Jennings is playing at an unbelievable level right now in terms of what he's doing for Tennessee. Those are the good things. And in the first half, their protection was good. Maurer did not get sacked in the first half. That's why he threw for over 200 yards in a half. Last time that had happened was against Vanderbilt in 2016.
JG's done it 5 times and 22 starts for the whole game.
Right. So they had some things going there. Georgia gets more aggressive in the second half. But really the game turned on the end of the first half.
Absolutely.
And the management of the clock there. Where Tennessee, you just couldn't give Fromm an opportunity at the end there to score. Tennessee, I thought, was too caught up in trying to have the lead at the half, 21-20. If you got the lead at the half, 21-20, that's great. The game's not over. You're still in a dogfight. You're trying to make it a 60-minute half. You can't let it become a 2-possession game there, which is exactly what happened after the Samaglia field goal. You got to manage that clock better.
Yeah, I looked at Jesse. It was second down, and I said they've got to run it here. The likelihood is Georgia will not call a timeout. If Tennessee can pop anything more than past the line of scrimmage, and in worst case you make them use a timeout, and instead. Incomplete pass, miss Samaglia field goal, minute to go, and here comes boom, 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 touchdown. And you're talking about the air out of the stadium. I mean, it was like pop. I mean, it was one of those things. You're right. They did a really good job in the game plan and putting Maurer and some of the playmakers, in a chance to be successful, opportunities to have success. But there late in the first half, I thought they did kind of they killed their own momentum that they had kind of gathered through the first 29 minutes. The first 29 minutes, Tennessee's right there.
And leading the football game.
Yeah, and your defense too. I mean, they had Georgia was moving the ball up and down the field in the first half, but the defense was able to bow up, with a couple stops in the red zone. They forced a couple field goals. Georgia kind of shot themselves in the foot with that one play. They had to kick the 50-yard field goal, but Tennessee's defense had some bend but not break to it. But then Georgia gets that score. Tennessee responds with, Maurer finds Callaway, I think, for like 20 yards, and then Juwan had the big play that got the crowd going crazy where he, drove 6 UGA, basically made half the team tackle him. And then, just odd play calling. Maurer finds Chandler on a hot, which was a smart play, but then you throw that shot to Callaway, there was some bumping. I know Tennessee fans were mad.
I thought that was a good no call.
Yeah, I mean, AP and I said...
I looked at Jesse, and all the, everybody knows I'm pro Vols, and everybody knows what Jesse's situation is. And I told him, I thought that was a good no call because Tennessee had kind of gotten away with a little chicken fighting, too, the whole night. I thought they were letting them both play, and honestly, a good way I like to see it called because, you could call a penalty on any play. So, I kind of thought it was a good no call, and I thought that some of the ones that went against Georgia, when Tennessee kind of got away with a little chicken fighting, was good no calls as well.
Yeah, they let them play there. I didn't think that was a penalty there. There was certainly some contact, but to me it didn't change the outcome of catching the football there. But that changed momentum. You talk about taking the air out of the balloon for the Tennessee fans in the stadium. I thought it changed the players. They didn't sprint off to the locker room at that point. They were disheartened with where that went at that point. But then you come out, Jesse, you get the stop you had to have to start the second half. You get a 3 and out, but you just can't do anything with it offensively after that. It was
what did you say? It was 11 of 14 passes in a row in the second half that Maurer started. That was deja vu versus Florida. You just kept calling these and Georgia's pass rush got heated up. He started to get hit. JG did come in and threw a nice dart to DWA. But then, and the game had a terrible flow in the third quarter too. It was a penalty every 5 seconds.
Right.
They were reviewing all these plays. The refs, the main ref had to get taken out because he had cramps or whatever. And they put in the officiating was certainly not a strength tonight. So the choppiness, one would think that it might actually play in the underdog's favor. It ultimately did not. Tennessee's defense did get a couple nice stops. Georgia was running the ball down their throat a little bit. Then they get the 2nd or 3rd and 2, 4th and 1. Henry Toa, 2 big stops. Defensively, though, that's where I think, in my opinion, is going to be the continued kind of concern with this team.
Well,
because if they're not going to play complementary football like we're talking about, where they're not going to shorten the game with the run, we think that Maurer has some promise. The receivers are clearly the biggest upside of this team. The defense, at times they will flash, but they did not even touch Fromm, I don't think. He missed 2 deep touchdowns. He played really well tonight, but missed 2 deep touchdowns to Pickens. But other than that, it was just wide open, pitch and catch. And when Georgia wanted to run the ball, it seemed like a lot of times they were just getting 5, 6, 7 yards a clip, and it was just kind of death by 1,000 paper cuts.
You're right. They show flashes. But where this defense was 3 weeks ago, going into Florida, I think they showed improvement at Florida, and I know Florida don't run it that well, but still. Again, the FCS teams were running it against Tennessee the last few years. Tonight, Georgia made some plays in the ground game, but Tennessee also did show enough flashes. I was afraid it was just going to be, 8 yards. Well, and I know they ran for 238, okay? I get it. But, at times they did show enough flashes to make me think, okay, when they play Kentucky, who didn't run that well against South Carolina, when they play South Carolina, when they play Vandy, even though Keyshawn Vaughn's a pretty good running back, they may have a shot, more of a shot than I thought 3 weeks ago. Because, again, 3 weeks ago, they couldn't have stopped the 3 of us.
Well, I think the thing that stands out to me, one, they've got to tackle better. Georgia fell forward 3-4 yards every time. They're not driving enough people back, and Jeremy Pruitt's going to talk about that on Monday in his press conference when he watches the tape, because they were always falling forward.
And they're not generating enough negative plays.
No, and Georgia in the first half had 42 snaps and 6 third down plays. So they were playing third down 1 every 7 snaps, which means you were giving up 6-7 yards a clip in the first half. Now in the second half, I thought they did some better things and adjusted to some things that they did better that Georgia was doing. Bottom line, they've got to generate some negative plays. They've got to generate a pass rush.
They can. Darrell Taylor he had one moment tonight where he kind of almost got there and Fromm got it away, but they can't get there.
And look,
I think they had one hurry on the night.
Georgia's only given up 1 sack all year. Okay, Georgia's best offensive line. Oregon's good. I think Georgia's best offensive line in the country. Okay, I may be wrong on that. Wisconsin may be better. Whatever. Georgia's as good as anybody in the country. I'll say that. So I didn't expect them to have Fromm running around everywhere. But we've got 5 games under our belt now seeing this team, and they can't generate a pass rush. They can't get there. They're going to have to figure out a way to somehow schematically get a pass rush besides, running a boundary blitz, which doesn't seem to get there very often either.
No, they did a couple of created. We talked about it in the Friday pod, right? That we saw them in practice doing a lot of the twists and the stunts and some of the different sub packages stuff. Well, they tried that tonight and they just didn't get home. They just simply didn't affect the quarterback, and for them to win some of these games, they're going to have to do that. They're going to be facing some green guys. Smith at Kentucky and the freshman at South Carolina. There's some guys coming up, even depending on whether it's Tommy Stevens or if it's the other freshman, Schrader, next weekend against Mississippi State. Those should be guys, ideally, that if you can pressure, perhaps they'll make mistakes. We know how much Pruitt thinks of Fromm. The guys other than Tua the next few weeks on the schedule are not like that.
Right, no question. Obviously Tua's Tua, but they're going to have some opportunities there. Some injury concerns for Tennessee. We'll find out more about those moving forward. Certainly Riley Locklear's injury could be significant for Tennessee.
And then Darnell got dinged up at the very end there.
Hurt his hand at the end. So we'll see what all that is in the coming days. That's going to be really paramount for Tennessee. They've got to get that offensive line back healthy and intact on the field for next week. So that's important. Those were a couple of late injuries that were significant potentially.
AP and I talked about this, and this is something I think we absolutely will probably expand upon for the Tuesday pod. Do you think about moving Crouch to inside linebacker?
I think
because
so.
I'll be very curious when the PFF and the snap count comes out. Batuli and To'o will probably play about every snap, and that you're only through game 5. There's no way you're going to survive with just 2 inside linebackers in this league.
They played every snap of defense. They did not. Neither one of those guys came off the field, and that's going to be really hard.
Hey, look, man, I know they were out there taking a knee at the end, but the fact that they even rolled those guys back out there with any kind of dive on a pile and a scrum, and that's crazy. I mean, like they're so thin there. Once it got to what it was, I would have not rolled them out there. I would have rolled actually Juwan out there, the linebacker, before I would have rolled either Henry or Daniel Batuli.
Well, and the other thing too with Crouch a little bit is I think Crouch ultimately, if he's going to stay on defense, is an inside the box guy. I think in open space, and he'll get better as he starts to continue to learn the position, but he has a harder time in open space coming off the edge as an outside linebacker. But we'll see. That'll be decisions that the coach. They've got to create some depth at the inside linebacker spot. Although Crouch played a ton at outside linebacker today, so we'll see what happens there. Bottom line, as we go out the door, how much the quarterback gives you hope, no doubt. Overall, despite the score, how much is there to build off for this team? How encouraged should fans be about this team moving forward?
Well, I think that's why I said encouraging question mark, because I do think that a year ago at this time we saw Tennessee make some real strides coming off the bye week. I mean, let's face it, they had 2 weeks to prepare for Georgia. There's obviously the familiarity, which I think is overblown because all these teams know each other anyways. But Tennessee was able to respond coming off the bye week and what they showed against Georgia last year with a performance, I think, was 2 weeks later they beat Auburn. This year, can they translate it faster? Can it be next week? They need to win next week. That's what we're talking about. They need to win next week.
And to your credit, you've been saying since the summer, most important game on the schedule is Mississippi State, as we said here tonight.
And even at 1-4,
it still is.
I still think so, because
it's just a different avenue that it got here.
I know. I thought they would be 3-2, and they're 1-4. You look at it. If they can win next week, I'm gonna map out the schedule here. If they can win next week, of course they'll lose to Alabama. Then that next week becomes just as important. If you can find a way right here to win at South Carolina, you're at 3-5 with 4 to go.
You have a chance,
and you're at least got a fighting chance. Again, after the start, after being sitting here at 1-4. If Tennessee could get back to the record they were at a year ago, I think that's.
The other thing
and
is,
I know that nobody wants to hear that. Everybody wants to, but I mean, I think that would be fairly impressive after the start they had. Again, I think you have to take positives, and Maurer gives this team the juice, the hope, the kind of. The fans, the inclination, hey, let's be out there next week at noon.
Well, my thing is, I don't even think with this football team you can project 3 weeks down the road. I just don't. In terms of depth, in terms of what we've seen, but I do think we can. They
I don't
need to
disagree
win
with you, but it's fun to play depth.
No, I get it.
It's fun to play the crystal ball.
The prognosticating
I hate the crystal ball, but I like it in this round.
It is fun, but I think it's about next week. Tennessee's now lost 3 home games.
Right.
Already in a season that was setting up to be a very favorable home schedule. Now, tonight was not a surprise, but you can't just next week. I mean, again, I have been on a different train in terms of the biggest game of the schedule because I also saw the season kind of playing out a little bit differently. But I think AP's right. This next game is huge. It could be the season.
Yeah, and the question is, how healthy do they get? And how much does Brian Maurer grow from week 1 to week 2 offensively?
And Jeremy can not commit to him next week all he wants to. That's his starting quarterback. I mean, the 4 plays down there at the end of the game inside the 5, and that last one specifically with JG backpedaling and then getting hit right as his arm's going forward is a microcosm of the JG era. No, he can sit there and play. Well, I don't know. We're going. He can help us. Yeah, he can help you. He was vastly different tonight in the number 2 role than he ever was when Quentin Dormady was here.
Well, the reason you got to keep him around is Brian Maurer is not the thickest guy in the world, and if he keeps taking shots like he took tonight in the second half, he's not going. I'm still hurting the quarterback. He's not going to be the quarterback for Tennessee because he's going to be watching the street clothes on the sideline. They certainly have to protect him better than they did in the second half. That's going to do it for this Instant Reaction podcast as Tennessee falls at home to Georgia tonight. Full coverage at VolQuest.com.